We are live. Finally, we have Enan. We're waiting for Scotty. So everyone relax for just a second. We had a small, I don't know what, miscommunication, whatever you like to call it, but we're going to get this stream started shortly. In the meantime, I wanted to mention, if you haven't already done so, you should enter to win a Hive Home Welcome Home Pack. If you haven't done this already, I'm not sure why, but check this out. Let me get this on the screen so that everyone can see. And I guess you can probably see the chat along with this too. This is a promotion that we started just a week ago. And check this out, only 100 entrants. So you can win this thing. I think it's worth like $300-400. And right now, if you enter, your chances are almost 1%, which is huge in a contest. Usually you're competing against thousands or tens of thousands of people. Right now you enter and you've got a pretty good shot at this. You tell a couple friends, spread the word, and odds are someone you know is going to win. So I encourage everyone to enter this contest. It's free stuff. There's no obligation. I think you got to hit subscribe or tweet something or whatever. And, you know, from that point on, you can do whatever you like. In any case, welcome back, everyone. It is time for the Thursday night hangout. And I think we got everything squared away. And wouldn't it just make sense that, you know, a technician would have some technical problems? That's how life goes sometimes. In any case, from Droid Mania, we have Enan joining us. From Strange Parts, we have Scotty all the way from Shenzhen, China right now. This is awesome. Guys, I'm so excited to have you on. I'm going to close my mouth quickly so we can hear from you. We're going to have lots of questions and stuff to go through, and I want to spend as much time talking to you guys or letting you guys talk really as possible. So welcome. Thanks for showing up.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
If it's going to be confusing to do, you know, just everybody randomly, or we should do one thing at a time or whatever. But in any case, let's do this first. Let's let everyone who doesn't already know who you are, what we're talking about. We have the, let me get this back on the screen again. We have Strange Parts. If you're not familiar, this is a guy who probably not unlike yourself, or at least like me, thinks that there's room for improvement on technology. And sometimes when you have something that works, there's no reason to get rid of that. You can leave it as it is and it's okay. And if not, you got to figure out a way to make it work. So what did he do? He built his own phone in China. He put a headphone jack into the iPhone 7, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Back into the first one that removed it.
7. More recently, upgraded the memory on your iPhone 6s from 16 gigs up to 128.
Yes, I have been corrected that I did not upgrade the memory. I upgraded the storage, just to be really clear. That has been a point of contention in the comments.
That's a good point. So you basically removed and replaced the NAND, reprogrammed it, and went to a much larger capacity on your storage at minimal cost. Because what did that chip run? Are you allowed to tell us like what you paid for the part?
Yeah. So I bought it in the markets. I'm forgetting now. I think it was like $25.
Wow. For 128 gigs of storage on an iPhone 6s.
Yeah. And if I was doing this in volume, I probably could get that price down a little bit.
Okay. So if someone was making phones, like let's say some company was making phones and they had to go from 16 gigs up to 128, we're not talking about a huge difference in cost, I wouldn't imagine. But when you go to sell that phone, you're definitely going to jack the price up. And people are going to pay, you know, whatever it is you're asking, right? Okay, we're going to talk more about that. I also want to introduce Enan from Droid Mania. Let me pull up your channel here again so people can see who you are. Obviously, the name kind of gives it away. We have an idea that you may be a Droid or an Android enthusiast, but you've got product reviews. You've got all sorts of stuff on your channel, man. Again, rather than me talking about it, tell me what you do.
Sure. Basically, my channel is to help people after they've purchased their devices. So typically, I focus around accessories, device setup, so the software that's on there, and things that you can do with the phone. So a lot of how-to videos, things along those natures. But mostly, it's around accessories, cases, screen protectors, things like that.
Okay, cool. And I noticed that you had not too long ago. In fact, I want to say one of your most popular videos was for a Galaxy tempered glass screen protector that you installed. And the first thing I thought of when I saw that is, man, I want to see a screen protector that fits on a Galaxy Edge, because those curved edges are not fun to work with. And then I realized that particular video wasn't about an Edge series screen, But have you had experience with those? Because those everyone really struggles with, you know, finding a good vendor where the things will fit.
Yeah, so now the screen protector that I recommend the most is the Whitestone Dome. I found that in terms of curved screens, that protector is more in line with what we used to see with just flat screens. So it fully adheres to the display. There's not that gap there. You don't get any bubbles or anything like that. It's pretty case friendly. So that's the one that I recommend the most. It's when it comes to the install, it's a little bit intimidating to some, but for the most part, I mean, if you follow the directions, then you can get through it.
As long as you don't live in a very dusty environment, which I think is one of the biggest headaches with, you know, not just screen protectors, but screens in general. When we do iPads, that's like our biggest enemy is dust. And I know that you can build like a dust-free environment, but you know, most consumers can't really go to that stretch. And I've even had people say, go in the bathroom, run the shower, get a lot of moisture in the air, and then you don't have to fight as much of that stuff that's sticking, you know, because the screen's like static. It's like your TV screen, right? The dust just gets vacuumed on there.
Yeah, I have a air purifier that I run all the time, and it'll pretty much, like the size of my office, it'll suck any dust that's floating around, any particles in the air. It sucks that right out.
Okay.
I usually will have that going as I'm doing the install, but for the most part, I'll just tell people, you know, turn off your AC, turn off your heat if you can, and then do your install. I don't go into the bathroom or anything like that.
Okay.
I've heard that you can do that. Run the shower.
You get to breathe that clean air at the same time, so that's a good excuse to get yourself an air purifier, right?
Oh yeah.
All right, guys, I have put the chat link over there in our chat in case you want to open up that in a separate window. We got all kinds of people saying hi, so it's going to be difficult to keep up with the chat, and we'll do the best that we can. By the way, I want to mention we have Johnny Chang with us. He's helping to moderate the chat and put the questions here where we can see them because it's just too much work to kind of try to pick through that stuff. For everyone who's watching, we're going to try to do our best to answer all the questions that we possibly can. If we miss something, come back after the video is published, and there might be some comments down below where, you know, Scotty or Enan might be able to address anything if it gets missed. We'll try to do our best here. Yeah. So other than that, guys, I like to keep this kind of casual. You know, there's stuff going on that we're probably all very in tune with. Scotty, your position as a consumer.
Oh, I lost you.
Right from the start. What do you use every day? Yeah. Well, what's your what's your main phone, your main device that you're rolling with right now?
It's not sitting with me right now. It's across the room, but my daily driver is actually pretty boring. It's a stock iPhone S that I bought in Hong Kong. To be honest, like for everything that I do, I'm not the guy who's got the latest and greatest gadgets. I'm usually kind of one step behind.
You said an iPhone S?
Sorry, an iPhone 7.
Oh, an iPhone 7. Okay.
An iPhone 7. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so iPhone 7. That's cool.
Yep. Yeah. Couple versions behind here at this point, but it does what I need, and you know, I'm not a guy who needs the latest and greatest. So, yeah.
I got you. Okay, that's cool. But for the most part, would you say that you are how long have you been on the iOS ecosystem?
Since the start. So I have owned an Android. I've owned a couple Androids, 1, 2 maybe. But they've been mostly for testing and development. I used to be a software engineer, and so at times I was doing stuff on Android. I've never really carried one for a long period of time as my daily driver. And I wouldn't classify myself like a huge Apple fanboy. I do tend to use iPhones. I do tend to use Macs. But I'm not religious about it. It's what works for me. Like, yeah.
We couldn't have you here if you were, to be honest. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I would, but it would be under different conditions. I'm thinking of a new concept we might start out for fanboys in the future, but that's not what tonight's about. Obviously, I'm going to guess you're using an Android, probably an Android enthusiast.
Yes, for the most part. I mean, Android's probably the phone that I'll right now. Let's just say in terms of my daily driver, I'm using the P20. Okay. But I guess you could say I'm an Android enthusiast.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I carry both, though. I also have an iPhone 10, so wherever I go, there's always two phones.
All right, well, that's awesome when we have people that are familiar with both products. You know, the thing that's unfortunate, I think, is that, you know, if you're raised on Windows and someone tries to show you Mac, it's like, get this out of here, you know, and vice versa. And it's unfortunate because obviously there are advantages and disadvantages to any product, you know, but to just say, hey, this is what I grew up with, this is the way it's always been, therefore it's right, that's not always the case, you know. And it's really sad when you just can't, you feel like you're banging your head against a wall if you try to introduce someone to something they're not used to, you know, because it's all about, I need to have the best. What's the best? What's the best? And we hear this question in retail all the time. And this was one I wanted to pose to you guys, you know, and it's when we talk about the fanboy effect, you know, we all understand what it is. We can pick one out from a crowd in a short conversation. And I just like to dig a little deeper and try to get an understanding of what pushes people to that extreme, you know, whether it's maybe they tried something and had a very bad experience and said, I'll never go back, or that team spirit mentality that we have as humans, because we are tribal by nature. So we need to root for what we think is going to win, right? If we go to an athletic contest, you know, I could say, I like the 49ers, and someone could say, well, 49ers aren't in the Super Bowl this year, so are you going for team A or team B? And I might say, really, I don't care because my team's not there. But there's still that inclination to choose a side, right? It's like you're either with us or against us. So, you know, beyond that, I can't get it. I can't understand why a consumer would say, I don't want to hear the other side. I don't want to know what else is available. Just lock me in. Do you think it's, I don't want to think about it? You know, it's easier to operate through life that way, or what?
You know, I think it's a little bit of people stick with what they know. For instance, like you mentioned, people that are on PCs versus Mac. If you're used to using that and you've never really experienced the other side, then it's kind of hard to switch and even have a reason to look to switch. Yeah, I see the same thing when it comes to iOS and Android. I mean, people tend to, if you're well versed or you're well into that ecosystem, and people tend to stick there. They don't really look outside of that. And then, like you said, people are tribal, so a lot of their friends may be, you know, using iMessage, and that's the thing that's keeping them there. Or, you know, on the Android side, I mean, there's, you know, I like to say there's not one army, there's several, and it really depends on the device manufacturer that a person has that loyalty to versus it being Android as a whole.
Right. Yeah. As you mentioned, you know, and especially among, you know, the current or the younger generation, there's definitely that peer pressure element as well. You know, if everyone else is using this and you don't have that, you're not cool. You know, if you don't wear this label, if you don't have an Apple or, you know, an Android or whatever icon everybody else has, it's crazy.
I think it's coming from more there than sort of, I mean, the reason that I tend to buy iPhones is because that's what I'm used to and that's what's worked for me in the past. But I don't think that really leads to that sort of over the top fanboy. I think it's really when you start to internalize that as part of your personality, right? And it becomes, you know, carrying an iPhone and being an Apple fan becomes part of who you are, right? That's what leads people to stand in line at the Apple store, right? They don't stand in line in the Apple store because they need the next phone that desperately, right? Like it's not because, you know, their old phone is so bad that they're, you know, it's that important to their life. They're standing in line because that's part of the identity, right? The identity of being an Apple fan includes standing in line to get the next phone.
Yeah, it's part of the experience.
Yeah. In China, surprisingly, iPhones are extremely popular. They're probably like 80% of the market here, would be my guess. In terms of what I see people carry. You would think that Android would be, you know, because there's a wide variety of Android devices and price ranges and things, you'd think that would be more common. But even when I go out to factories, the factory line workers are carrying iPhones and carrying nice iPhones, not old iPhones. And it's a status symbol here. It's a status symbol. Like the brand is a status symbol. People are, you know, I meet repair technicians, Chinese repair technicians here that are like legit Apple fanboys. Like, you know, they come at it from a different direction, right? So not only do they have to carry like the, you know, the latest iPhone X, but they also have to have like all of the like right repair tools, the special screwdrivers that don't leave marks on the screws, and like it gets really crazy. But yeah, I mean, I think it all comes down to people's identity, right? They wrap up who they are in the products that they own, and that turns into this really fanatical devotion to brands.
That's crazy. I can just hear it. You know, I can hear things like memories coming back to me, like, I drive a Mercedes, or I wear this kind of, you know, it's like, and that's so true. Speaking of China, there was something in the chat from John Cassidy. He said, strange parts are are the iPhone parts in China much cheaper in China than in the US? That was a question directed to you, Scotty.
Yes. And I'll caveat that with, I don't really know what they cost in the US. But every time I look at prices, generally I'm shocked. Like, so to give people an example, okay, well, let me ask you guys, how much does it cost to have an iPhone battery replaced in the US?
Depending on where you go, you're probably, if you're talking about replaced and installed, like you're paying someone to do it for you, you're probably looking at like 30, 40 bucks.
Okay. So the batteries here cost $5, like in quantity 1 over the counter. So to get it installed, maybe another $10 in labor. Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if the value of American dollars is a factor there. You know, if you compare one currency to another, can you generally get more for $1 in China than you can in the US?
Not universally. No. So it really depends. Like food and beer are cheaper here. Rent is like comparable. Like consumer brand name electronics are more expensive because of import tax. So there's like a 20% import tax on pretty much everything across the board.
Okay.
So if it's made by even iPhones, even though they're made here in China, they are made by they're made for a foreign company. So they have to be exported and then re-imported, and then they get tax added on. So it's actually cheaper to buy like electronics across the border in Hong Kong than it is here in Shenzhen.
Right, and as we briefly discussed this a couple of weeks back, everyone, where there was reportedly, allegedly, there were people who had set up a system using drones. So they tied a tether to a drone, flew it across the border to another building. So there's basically a rope going across the border, and they're transferring iPhones, you know, because every iPhone they send across, they're making a profit on because it sells for so much more compared, you know, because of basically evading the import taxes. And, you know, the story's a couple of weeks old, but man, it didn't surprise me, but it kind of blew my mind when I read it, you know, what lengths people are willing to go through for that. And on that topic, since we're talking about China, and this is
they were actually using crossbows before they were using drones. So
what was that?
I had heard through the grapevine, like maybe 2 years ago, they were using crossbows to get the rope across before they were using drones. So the drones is an upgrade.
So hey, back away from the window. I'm sending the crossbow over the bolt over right now. That's insane. What, dude? You can imagine that thing going off course and going into the wrong hotel room window.
Wow. So this was a one phone at a time delivery then.
No, I think they were sending like a basket full of phones at a time. Like I think it was pretty high volume.
Well, they were attaching a rope to it, right? So they set up a system using the crossbow.
Right. The crossbow would get the rope across the river, and then they were, running a zip line.
Yeah, so you got like a zip line where you just slide the phone probably. That is awesome, just like the movies. So you're in China. Enan, I know you've been following this one as well, but just recently ZTE has had some problems. And just today I read a notice that said that the powers that be in the US are advising customers against buying ZTE products because their Android licensing may not be authorized in the future. So they may not be able to update the operating system on their current phones that are sold in the US, which makes sense. We know that we had sanctions on Iran, which, you know, I'm not going to touch the politics of it, but the agreement was our chip makers would sell components to ZTE on the condition that they didn't give any of that stuff to Iran, which they did. They got their hand slapped. They got almost $900 million in fines, said they wouldn't do it again, got caught doing the same thing. And the big downside, and every time I bring this up to people here and I say, man, you know, the ZTE thing is going to be one less competitor, a lot of people's response is, so what? You know, who cares about ZTE? I don't have a ZTE. No, but here's the thing. Intel, Qualcomm, and Microsoft all sell to ZTE, which means that if they can't sell anymore, all those companies are affected, and these are American-owned companies. So, yeah, maybe you should be concerned.
Yeah.
But Enan, what do you think? What's your take on this? And you know, especially following the death of the Huawei deals, you know, where we're not going to see them in Best Buy or AT&T or probably any carrier stores in the future.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it hurts us in terms of, you know, just being able to have that selection out there, right? We know that Apple's here. Apple has their phones, but in terms of the Android marketplace, we need it to be competitive so that we as the consumer can actually get the best phones. So not being able to have a company like ZTE, for instance, in the pool with these others. I think that hurts us all. Not only like I said, from a consumer standpoint, but just looking at the companies that are making some of these hardware parts. I mean, they're going to suffer. Their prices are probably going to get increased. Their hardware prices for us are probably going to be increased as well. So I think there's a lot of pieces that are going to be impacted by that decision. So that's kind of my take on it.
Now, Scotty, you're a little closer to the where this is happening. So obviously, you know, there's a limitation to what information you're able to give us and what you have. So we're not going to press you, but I'm curious on you know, what your thoughts are on this matter. To
be honest, like I think the only information I have on this is what you've told me. I really have not been following this because I'm in China. I often sort of miss the U.S. context of this, right? So, and this is common in many areas where I'm like, I have the Chinese perspective, but the Chinese perspective really doesn't like it's not something that people are talking about here because it doesn't affect them, right? So, I guess what I'll say broadly is like there are a bunch of amazing Chinese phones and Chinese manufacturers. You know, ZTE, Huawei, Oppo, Xiaomi. I'm a big Xiaomi fan. I just in my last video bought a Xiaomi laptop and it's great. It was all in Chinese, which I finally figured out how to switch it into English. But other than that, like it's a great sort of entry. I bought the cheapest laptop they have, and it's a great little entry level laptop that's reasonably well put together. And I've played with their phones a little bit, and it's Xiaomi is an amazing brand. So I'm all in favor of a diverse marketplace and competition, and would love to see Chinese manufacturers continuing to sell phones in overseas markets and U.S. markets. So
which is in direct conflict with fanboy mentality. They don't want competitors. They want one team to win, and that's it. You get this choice or this choice. But that being said, I want to say I read an article today, and I believe it was Xiaomi that stated or claimed that they invented the notch like 3 or 4 years ago. It was either Xiaomi or Huawei. I think it was Xiaomi. So they stated that they had invented the notch 3 or 4 years ago, and they were too conservative. They didn't want to push it. They didn't want to build it into their phones because they thought that people would react negatively. And for whatever reasons there are, when Apple does something, then it's okay to do it after that. Official. And, they kind of said that next time they're going to take more chances because, obviously waiting and taking signals from another company, that makes you look like you're ripping off someone else's idea. And if, in fact, you came up with that 3 or 4 years ago and you didn't do it, it's kind of like having a patent, right? If you don't file for it, someone else thinks it up. It's not yours anymore.
But at the same time, is the notch the innovation, or is the ability to sell the notch to consumers the innovation, right? So, I mean, Apple has amazing engineering, yes, but what they're really, really good at is marketing and getting people to get on board with something, right? And so, I mean, I would sort of make the counter argument that like, okay, you came up with the notch, but you held back because you weren't sure you could sell it marketing wise. And maybe there's a reality in that, which is that, from a marketing and brand perspective, you couldn't actually get people on board in the way that Apple did. And Apple's real, sort of contribution here is actually just selling people on the idea.
Right. That's a good point.
I don't know.
Sort of like we had wireless charging about, 5 or 6 years ago. And it wasn't cool then. I think I was the only one using a wireless charger at that point. No one else liked it. It was like,
it's a nice to have. I mean, it's not a requirement, but it is a nice thing to have.
You know what?
Totally.
It would be great. And I've seen these on aftermarket versions, but I think that every single phone in the world right now should have one of these. One of these little magnetic chargers that comes with it in the box, which, by the way, I happened to look this up, and it wasn't Apple, but it was China that came up with the idea a long time ago for rice cookers. And that's where they, I'm not going to say stole, but that's where they adapted the idea from. So when you trip over boiling rice, you don't dump it on the floor, which makes sense, right? Every coffee maker, every phone, anything that you can break the charging port off of. I don't know why they don't already have that. I mean, it's
well, it seems like we're moving away from that, right? With the USB-C at least on Mac laptops, right? They've moved away from magnetic charging, which I'm a little bit surprised by. That being said, like at least the USB ports on my laptop come out pretty easily, so it doesn't look super easy to sort of snap it off, but I was surprised.
Yeah, I've seen it happen. I mean, it still does It still does happen, and it would have been nice to have that magnetic cable there. But.
What I have seen is now, you guys are probably aware of this, there's some like retrofit adapters where you can add like a MagSafe type adapter to a USB-C port. Like there's something that plugs into the port, and then it's sort of like magnetic breakaway kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's what we need, and especially if I can't mention, I can't even remember how many people I know that insist on using the phone while it's plugged in, and you can see the cord being stretched. I'm saying either your cord or your port's going to give out soon. Oh yeah, okay, whatever. But when they're going to use the phone, they're going to use the phone. If the battery's low, they're going to plug it in. So if you if it was included out of the box, that wouldn't be possible, or at least you wouldn't be putting stress on anything,
Yeah.
Well, I just ripped the end off of a lightning cable the other day, running around with a battery stuck in my back pocket and the phone stuck in the front pocket, and got caught on something. I mean, it happens.
I am ready for wireless everything by now.
Oh yeah.
I want to say hi to everyone in the chat, guys. Today is going to be really difficult to keep up, but we've got all sorts of people here. I'm going to start from the bottom. John Crowell, Greg M, Chabonky Bonk, Andreas, Tech for Your Needs, Johnny Chang, obviously, John Cassidy, what's going on, Greg M, Real World Review, Wayne Taylor brought his Xiaomi pizza boots. That's an old joke, guys. If you remember during the Final Four, they had pizza tops. I don't know if you saw those, but there was it was Nike, right? They had high tops where you press a button on the shoe and you order a pizza automatically. Oh, you might have not gotten the news out there, Scotty.
No.
But yeah, and it seemed ridiculous. And at the same time, I really wish I had a pair, because that's going to be a collector's item, like the original Air Jordans or the original pumps or anything like that.
Yeah. Was this a recent thing?
Yeah, this was just last month.
Okay. Yeah, totally missed that. I don't get most marketing, most U.S. marketing.
I had, and by the way, Enan, where are you located?
I'm in Jersey.
You're in Jersey. Okay, so we got East Coast, West Coast, and China. And, something that you said earlier, Scotty, is that we have to assume, and we have obviously people from all over the world watching this stream. So we get these conversations all the time. It's like, oh, we do this over here. Never heard of that before. And, we're living in this little world saying, okay, whatever we see, whatever news we see, that's it. That's the extent of what's going on in the world. And someone will come from the other side and say, wow, you guys don't know about this, and I never heard about that. It's exciting to have this technology where we can communicate so quickly and with so many different people. Almost as sad as it is that there's still so much misinformation out there. You think that would have been an end to the BS, but in fact, it can be perpetuated on the platform of your choice if that's what you choose to do.
Yes.
All right. So we had a couple more things that actually were on the list here. I'm going to start with this one, Scotty, because you had initially decided, I think that, was it the building your own iPhone or adding the headset jack to your iPhone that came first?
It was making my own iPhone.
Okay, making your own iPhone. So you pretty much, tell us the story. Did you just take every single component and assemble it?
Yes, over the course of like 2 months. So, so really it kind of started with this idea of, it was actually not my idea. It was someone who was passing through Shenzhen. There's kind of an informal group of people that I have beer with occasionally.
You were already there, just
hardware hackers. Yeah, I came here because I was really excited about learning more about electronics manufacturing and seeing what was going on here in Shenzhen. I'd kind of heard rumors and I wanted to see it for myself. And I thought maybe I was kind of in between things in my life and looking for my next adventure. And I thought maybe I'd find it here, and I have. It didn't quite look like what I thought it would. So someone mentioned, I walk through all these cell phone parts markets and I see all these parts. I wonder if there's enough there that you could actually put together a full working phone. And I said, that's a great idea. And then nope, none of us did anything with it for like 9 months. And she didn't do anything with it. And I was like, that's still a great idea. And I think it would make for a great story, right? Because the real interesting part is not actually putting together the phone. Repair technicians do that all day long. It's the story of the markets, right? Like, how do the markets work? How do they fit together? What can you get? How does it work? Like, who sells what? And so I really just dove in. I thought it was going to be kind of like a vlog series. I thought I was going to do it over, 5 or 6 episodes. And actually, the only reason that didn't happen was that I piled up footage. Like I didn't get around to editing. And so I kept piling up footage. And it was, you know, I spent a lot of time just trying to understand, like, how does it work, right? Like, where do I go? Who do I talk to? What parts do I need to buy? And, you know, that's all compounded by the fact that I don't speak Chinese very well, and I spoke even less then. So a lot of it was just the challenge of that, of language barrier and cultural barrier and sort of trying to navigate around. But yeah, over, I don't know, course of a couple of weeks or a month, like I gradually sort of figured out, okay, like I have to go buy a logic board and I can go here to do that. And I have to get, you know, a battery and a case. And part of it was like figuring out, like, I had this question from a perspective of like, how deep do I go, right? Do I try and solder my own logic board, right? Because you can actually get like bare circuit boards that have no components on them, right? Man, and then you can buy chips, right? So should I start from scratch here? And like, if I do that, like, how am I going to do that, right? How am I going to like test this thing? How am I going to know if I have one bad solder joint, right? It's one thing to be repairing a board that may have 1 or 2 faults on it, but if you're building it yourself, you don't know how many faults you have. You may have 10, you may have 20 faults. You know, how do you sort of bootstrap yourself up to that point? So I spent like a couple of weeks trying to learn how to do like, you know, 01005 service mount soldering under a $10 USB microscope, which was like a fairly strong dead end. And obviously now, like, I've leveled up and I have, you know, a much nicer microscope, and I'm doing much more detailed soldering. But at the time, I was a total newbie to any of this, right? I'd never really done any phone repair. I'd never done any like surface mount soldering work in any level of detail. And so eventually, yeah, I sort of figured out, okay, like, here's kind of the sweet spot for what I think I can do, right? In terms of buying a logic board. I almost bought all of the equipment I needed to do like screen refurbishing and screen relamination. But instead, I ended up going to a booth that already had that did screen repair. It was kind of friends of friends. And we filmed them doing it instead, just because I didn't want to be stuck with thousands of dollars of heavy screen refurb equipment for like maybe one video. Who knows? Maybe I'll get that stuff at some point now. But yeah.
Okay.
And
so my question would have been that, yeah, I don't think, and Nate just made a comment in the chat here where he said that you have inspired him to build his own phone from the logic board level, starting with the bare board. Nate, I got to say good luck, and I'll see you in 9 months, because there are components on that thing. And you already know that. I know Nate. Nate is a tech. Like, he does this stuff every day. And I looked at that and I thought it'd be cool to have a bare board just to see where the traces go. You know, if you didn't already have a board level schematic or a board view schematic, good luck, man. If you pull it off, I mean, you're going to have to harvest, what is it? 4 different unique components for the iCloud alone. You've got to get the NAND, you've got to get the EEPROM, you got to get a couple other things are all tied together.
Yeah. Baseband, I think baseband processor, Touch ID. I didn't know about the EEPROM, but the NAND actually, I mean, isn't tied, right? Because you can upgrade it. So you can use any NAND.
That's true. You can program the NAND to match as long as you have the owner's IMEI, right? But there are several components that have to come from the same, if it's on a cloud account, obviously. But you know what? I'll let that go, because I just realized we have so much to get through in, like, I'm going to say 25 minutes, because we did start a little bit late. So I hope you guys don't mind going a couple extra minutes.
No.
But yeah, let me go over here real quick for anyone who hasn't already seen it. I want to get this on the screen so you can tell if you just joined us who we're talking to. Let's make this a full screen real quick. Bring this up. And I'm just looking at how many videos do you have on your channel, Enan? You have a lot of videos.
Yeah, there's probably, I want to say about 340.
Okay.
Oh my God.
So give or take, I mean.
So you are publishing every other day?
No, well, so I go in bouts right now. Oh, sorry, I've got Siri talking to me. I publish at least twice a week. Let's say that.
Okay. So so obviously all sorts of skins, screen protectors. This is all about quite a bit of product review, obviously, which you said earlier. So if someone just bought a phone and you want to know what the best Android games are, speed test comparison, look like we started out here, all kinds of stuff. How do you keep up with this? I have had so many vendors saying, sending me things to review accessories, and you know what amount of time goes into editing a 5-minute
yeah.
video. It's just like,
oh yeah, lots. So I pick and choose. I get a lot of requests. It's gotten to the point now where I've had to start to turn down requests for product reviews just because I get so many on a frequent basis. So I pick what I like, and then I'll usually review that. And then a lot of times I buy a lot of things that I know that I'm going to review. So those are the things that I usually will do first, and then I'll take on the product reviews that I get sent or asked. And then a lot of it will come from requests. So it depends on what the viewers want to see.
okay, cool, fair enough. And you obviously have a real job, as they say.
Oh yeah,
This is your side thing, okay?
Yeah. I have a 9 to 5, and YouTube takes all the rest of the time.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, I got to say, man, it's I have a lot of admiration for your ability to keep up with this stuff, because I get so many requests for product reviews that are just, I can't do it. You know, it's like, if I get one more request for a Bluetooth product review, I don't know I'm going to get Bluetooth speaker. You know, it's like, how many Bluetooth speakers and how to grade these things, you know, because everyone comes on and says, well, how does it sound? And you're like, well, I don't know. What do you want it to sound like? Do you want overcompensated low end frequency because you're going to be playing something that booms, or do you want something that's going to give you a wider? I don't know the answer to that question.
It's all relative. I mean, you know, even lately for me, I mean, my use cases around any of the products that I have, it's changed so much because now I work from home full time. Whereas before, even a year ago or two, or a year or two ago, where I traveled to New York City on a daily basis, I mean, I used a lot more electronics. So I had a lot more going on during my daily commute, whereas now I'm home. I never run out of battery. You know, there's a lot that has changed.
Yeah.
So it's my use cases.
Well, you know, Johnny had actually given us a question to start off with earlier today, and I wanted to run this by both of you guys. And it was, are influencers the new technology evangelists? So considering social media, YouTube, all these avenues that we have to reach other people, you know, 20 years ago, if you wanted to be an actor, you had to know somebody, you had to get on TV, you had to make movies, and then you were there and that was it. Now, if you have content that people enjoy, or you have a message to spread that people want to listen to, there are so many platforms you can go through that, you know, we've already seen the effects here on YouTube. Advertisers want to pay to have Alphabet or YouTube or Google or whatever you want to call it, put advertising into your videos so that they can reach the people that are buying it. And little by little, you got to imagine that mainstream media, television, radio, that kind of stuff, it's still there. But I mean, I can't tell you the last time I turned on the radio. Everything I listen to is downloaded, it's streamed. You know, if you're not advertising on Pandora or Spotify or something else like that, you're not getting to me on AM or FM, you know, anymore. And the same thing I think applies to video. When we look at television, we're looking at Netflix, you know, we're looking at Hulu, we're looking at YouTube.
It's all on demand.
ABC, NBC, Fox, all these guys, you know, I hate to see anyone fail, but I got to say, you should diversify your method of communicating. What do you guys think about the possibility that influencers like yourselves in the future may be really, you know, what makes a buying decision for a consumer?
I mean, I think we're already there in a lot of cases, right? I wouldn't say that I do a lot of that. I don't do a lot of that, and that's by choice. But I think there are a number of big tech YouTubers and small tech YouTubers that are really the key place people are going to make decisions. I mean, and you're seeing brands are sort of picking up on that, right? You're seeing brands like DJI, for instance, that are, you know, their big strategy is to go to people like, say, Casey Neistat for their sort of, you know, launching their product onto the market. So,
yeah, I definitely would agree.
People that are purchasing drones, you know, are looking to those.
I wonder if, you know, considering all the controversy behind demonetization of YouTube channels, you know, these same advertisers that want to spend their dollars to get a product to someone are going to say at the same time, we don't want certain types of people or video or themes or anything representing our brand names. So I can see ultimately.
Oh, did we lose him?
I think we lost him.
What our product is.
I thought I was going to be the guy.
What's that?
We lost you for a
I said
second.
I thought I was going to be the guy with the internet connection.
Oh, was it me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm seeing some off and on stuff here. My apologies. Every time I mention advertisers and ISPs, something goes funny with my internet connection. I don't know what it is. But if you didn't catch that, what I was saying is that I wonder if a lot of these brands that are upset about having their advertising go on to someone's channel that they don't approve of won't just say, you know what, we'll just directly contact the top X number of YouTube creators. And I'm not saying I like this idea, because obviously they're not coming to me if they're looking for someone with millions of subscribers. But it certainly seems, from a business standpoint, that would make a lot more sense than just saying, okay, Google, advertise our product and make sure it doesn't go on any channels that we don't want it to be on. Because what are you going to do? There's no way.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all about controlling brand message, right? And it's all about controlling image, right? And so, working directly with, specific known personalities and working out deals directly with them, often which come with sort of, attached agreements around how the brand will be presented. That's one approach. Another approach is sort of leaning on YouTube to make sure that your ads are running where you want them and running against content that matches what you're trying to achieve with your brand. But I mean, I think it's all kind of in that same sphere of like, how do I make sure that my brand is being represented to consumers in a way that matches what I want to convey?
Yeah, and
I think it's
storytelling. Yeah, it's like a combination. It's kind of what we're seeing. It's like a combination in terms of them going out to, like you said, some of the bigger content creators who may represent their brand the way that they want. And then you have, the smaller guys like me or even Mike, for instance, who I think we have pretty good channels, and we could also do the same without necessarily misrepresenting or, just putting out a message that they may not necessarily want to be on board with.
And that's the real catch-22 here. Obviously from the perspective of many smaller channels is that, yes, like I said, it would make business sense to say, hey, this person has all these views, let's spend our advertising dollars directly with them. But at the same time, you're going to reduce the variety of content that's produced. If no one's making money, if you're not a big name, then all of a sudden a lot of people have lost their incentive to create. So there's that. I won't even touch the freedom of speech issue because that is way too complicated. But it's interesting to be living in this time where these changes are happening, when the distribution of information has gone from a very controlled environment like it was in the past. Newspapers, television, they had control over pretty much the political leanings of their audience. And we saw this thing with, I don't know if you saw it recently, where a big broadcaster kind of sent the same message to every single news station in the country. Did you guys watch that?
No.
It was, okay, I don't want to say the name on here for the whole advertising concern, but I'll give you guys this afterwards. There was a big company, and you can find it if you look for it. All of their affiliate stations were sent out a script to read, and they all read it word for word, talking about how it's dangerous for the media to control what people hear because they own so much of it, when they in fact did exactly the same thing by sending the script out. And they got caught because one of my favorite, I want to say it was John Oliver, but somebody else, I think it was John Oliver's show, he played it, and it's like, whoa, this guy said it, this guy said it. And they all say the same exact thing, which you can imagine
that never happens. I mean, word for word. I said, and that it had to be scripted because that never happens.
Yeah, it's absolutely scripted, and it made you feel for a minute like what it may be like in some other parts of the world where you don't have the ability to access things like YouTube, Twitter. You just get what you're allowed to have, and how that shapes your perception of not only your own environment, but the rest of the world. We could all be the bad guys if you ask someone from, some remote part of the world who has no idea what's going on. And I'm not saying we are or aren't. I'm just saying, there's a big factor there. Anyways, don't let me get too far off topic here, guys. I do want to ask one more about Scotty. We know that you upgraded the NAND on the iPhone 6s, increasing the memory, which is crazy for a cost of the equipment about $25.
Outside of the cost of the equipment. Yeah.
Outside the cost of the equipment. And the fact that on that one, I wouldn't be as hesitant to do a project like that because the connectors underneath that chip, the balls underneath where they connect are relatively large, in comparison to something like
bad in the grand scheme of like logic board repair. Not bad.
Yeah, that's exciting. The hard one, I think, and the one that I really, honestly, it's when I first heard about you was putting the headphone jack back in the iPhone, which was the iPhone 7, if I remember right.
Right. Yeah. Right.
It wasn't a Plus. It was a standard iPhone 7.
Correct.
One that had no room for a headphone jack because they needed that for other things, and it wouldn't fit.
Right. Well, they needed room for more courage, is what I heard.
There was not enough courage. That is right. And, unfortunately, Apple may not have the budget necessary to hire someone like yourself to figure this problem out. So,
it's true.
We got to give them the benefit of the doubt.
I did reach out at the end of my video and mentioned, if there are any Apple engineers that want to get in touch with me, I was happy to share the work that I did. If they needed, I'd heard at the time that they were working on some new iPhones. They had not yet released the 8 or the X, but it was very much rumored and kind of on the way. And I really wanted to reach out and offer any services. I did not get any official contact. I did have a few unofficial contacts with just people who work at Apple who reached out and wanted to take a look at the board and stuff. But apparently they didn't use any of my work because we haven't seen the headphone jack come back on the iPhone platform, as well as we've seen multiple Android manufacturers sort of following suit. So
yeah, that's
again, like not a hardcore sort of evangelist here or hardcore fanatic as far as the headphone jack, but I do miss having it. Like it is kind of annoying to like have to carry adapters and multiple headphones and stuff for my devices. So I think it's a real mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And the sound quality is not as good either once they drop the headphone jack.
Yeah, you cannot get analog sound through a wireless connection through this. I don't know about this USB dongle or whatever, but I'll tell you one thing. First of all, I think a lot of us kind of saw what was really going on there. And I will say that it makes me sad every time I see anyone who is running Android operating system say, oh, Apple just did this on their last model. We're going to do this. That makes me sad. I don't buy an Android phone so it can be like an Apple phone. That's not what, if I wanted that, I'll go get Apple. But most of all, I have an account with a credit card scanner that plugs into a 3.5 millimeter headset jack. So I can use a credit card scanning machine on the go by just plugging this little deal into my phone, and that's gone. And that's the one they give you for free because obviously the merchant is making money on every transaction. Now you can spend, I think it's $99 or $150 to get one that works with the Lightning connector, or not the Lightning connector, with the USB-C or Lightning or whatever. I'm sorry.
So Mike,
connector.
I actually have some interesting information about that. So the people that I tend to hang out with here are a combination of like the guys that are repairing cell phones in the markets and Westerners that are here to do like, production manufacturing, right? And geeks like me that are just excited about this, right? And I have talked to some people that were looking to build like Lightning devices. And the way to do that, like if you're Square or someone like that, and you want to make like a legit above board device for sale, you have to get the Lightning authentication chip from Apple, right? Yeah, right. The MFI chip, which you can't get legitimately any other way, and like it's a serious. Well, you can't really sell a device on the open market without getting shut down by Apple unless you go through that licensing, the MFI licensing program.
And my understanding is they collect a royalty on every single unit that's sold with the MFI certification on it.
Do you know how much that royalty is?
I don't, but I would take a wild guess. It's probably like, I don't know, $3 or $4.
Higher.
Higher?
15.
Wow.
15 is the rumor I've heard.
What?
Right? So it's why there's such a big price gap. One is like, a Lightning connection is way more complicated than an audio connection, right? You've got a lot more chips, you have a lot more manufacturing, you have a lot more testing. But also, like Apple's taken $15 straight off the top of every single Lightning device, right? Anything that's not a cable, right? I think the cables also, in theory, have to be licensed, and that's cheaper. But anything that's more complicated.
That makes a lot more sense, because I'm sitting here thinking of cables right off the bat, and a lot of these cables that are MFI are like $20, and I'm wondering how they're making any kind of money on that. That makes sense. So if you make a device,
I think they have a lower licensing fee for just cables, because it's actually, I think, a different chip.
Gotcha.
If I'm I might be wrong about that.
Okay. Well, we lost Johnny Chang. He was actually asking about the MFI certification earlier today. And ironically, I had to replace a TriStar on an iPhone 6S Plus yesterday because, as you may already know, if you use a non-certified Apple cable long enough, eventually your phone won't charge anymore in most cases. Now, there are some premium quality ones that are a little better, but that particular circuit, that integrated circuit that's installed to detect whether or not you're using an MFI cable, they are super, super, super sensitive. So any fluctuations in voltage, amperage, it doesn't see what's supposed to be there that Apple put into it. And your phone starts doing funny things. And once they go bad, you cannot reverse the process. You have to replace it on the logic board. And obviously, you know, if you're in the phone repair business, it's not terrible news. But if you're a consumer, that's not too cool.
Yeah. I use janky cables from the markets all the time. I use whatever I can get my hands on. I've never had that problem, but I believe you. Like, I would suspect that it's kind of some phones. You know, not every phone hits it, but
I suspect that it's some phones. There are some differences in some of the logic boards within the same. Well, I'm telling you. I'm just for anyone who doesn't know. There are some differences in one iPhone 6S logic board to another. There are different versions here and there. But I suspect it's also particular lightning cables. There are, like I said, there are some off brands that work fine. But the unfortunate thing is you're not going to know there's a problem with the cable until there's a problem with the phone. And in many cases, for some reason, oddly enough, it seems like, and I know this is pure coincidence, but it seems like they last beyond the warranty period on the phone before those cables start causing problems with the IC that determines whether it's able to charge or not. It's funny how that happens.
Yes. Just like the battery battery issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a program and also acknowledging that your phones bend, and you'll cover any of them that were bought within the last 12 months. But for the ones that were older than that, well, you're on your own, which, you know, again, let's think of it from their side. I want to be fair. If I sold a product and a year and a half later, someone says, hey, there's a defect in it, and I'm thinking, well, it made it through the warranty period. You know, there is an argument to say that you shouldn't have to have a recall. You know, there's got to be a limit, right? A limitation on how far back.
And it can really turn your account down if you're giving, you know, lifetime warranties on particularly tech products, right?
Yeah.
We saw, you know, like LL Bean walked back their lifetime warranty because they felt like people were abusing it. So, you know, I mean, I think there are limits to to generosity there. You know, just from the practicalities of running a business.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I did want to mention I ran across something interesting in the Lightning world when I was working on the headphone jack project. I ran across the fact that the phone can update Lightning adapters, can update the firmware. So there's firmware running on any adapter that's not a cable that plugs into the Lightning jack, right? The phone can push new software down to the cable and does. And the cable can actually talk to an Apple website to get new firmware from the Apple website, which from a security perspective is super interesting, right? Because it means in theory, and you would have to kind of find a couple exploits to do this. In theory, you could write a worm that was transmitted from Apple device to Apple device via an infected adapter, right? And then those iPhones or other devices could, in theory, infect other adapters. It would be a super slow spreading worm, but it would be very interesting. As far as I know, nobody has done that.
Yeah, of course not. That's crazy. That's a little scary. And at the same time, it kind of explains why I always brag about this. I have a Lightning cable that I got in, I want to say 2013. And it worked, and it's an aftermarket brand. It was made from a company that actually sent it in for a review, right? And it was MFI certified, legit Apple. I got it for like my iPhone 5. And I can charge an iPhone 8 with that cable, no problem. And I was thinking at some point, these things are going to be, they're not going to be capable of charging the new device. But if what you're saying makes so much sense, they're updating that thing when I connect it to the phone.
Yeah.
Wow. And that
it's adapters. It's more like an HDMI adapter or something like that. Something that has more logic than just a cable.
Right. Oh, so it wouldn't be a cable.
Yeah. It would not be a cable. It would be something more than that, right? Some other sort of more involved device. Yeah.
But
that's my understanding anyway.
I've got an old cable, like I said, 5 years old. It still works on any Apple device.
Well, they haven't changed the right? The charge standard has remained relatively the same with sort of backwards compatibility for older cables and older chargers, right? So when you plug in a lightning cable, like there is some, a fair amount of circuitry inside the actual lightning plug, and it will do some negotiation to tell the phone what amperage it's capable of charging at, right? So the standard, like if it can't figure anything out, it will assume that it can draw half an amp, right? But the cable and the charger can tell it, oh, I'm actually capable of charging at 2 amps instead, right? So I think with the older cables, the phone is just sort of assuming, okay, I can't draw that fast off, this cable and this charger.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's some intelligence built in to the device for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, I want to also real quick. I mean, guys, question for Ian, and then we'll wrap up here shortly. I can't thank you guys enough for showing up. This is awesome. I'm glad we got it all together.
Sure. Yeah, me too.
So we'll hang out a little bit longer if that's okay with everyone. Enan,
sure.
So you I'm assuming recently got the P20.
I did. I was a little worried just because of everything that's going on with Huawei phones and not really being able to get them at Best Buy anymore. So I hesitated a little bit, but I got it anyway on Amazon. So yes.
So far you're loving it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. This is actually, well, if I count the Nexus 6, this is probably my 4th Huawei phone. So I've always kind of enjoyed using their phones. It's just they're not readily available. You can't really walk into a store and try before you buy type of a thing. So you really have to want it if you're going to do it.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Did you take a look at the P20 Pro and think,
Well, actually, yeah, I do want the Pro, but again, it's the whole, if I import it because it's not going to be available here, then, if I have an issue, and we know how Huawei support can be, it's a chance.
That's the downside. I'm so disappointed by this whole thing, especially, I'm a big skeptic, I'll tell you right now, but when you start having government organizations involved in something that affects trade and commerce, it's difficult not to be skeptical and really wonder where the source, where the influence is coming from when it says, don't buy this particular product from this place. We got great products right here that we're already selling. It always makes me very suspicious, first off. And secondly, like you mentioned, this is one of the problems that we have when people buy phones that aren't commonplace, and it doesn't have to be Huawei. It could be Motorola. A lot of times sourcing the parts for the repairs, which is what I do, it becomes challenging at points. In fact, I'm looking for a part for an iPad Pro right now that I can't find. Scotty might even be able to help me out with it, but by the time we got it here, the lag is insane. And I bet you have all this stuff available over there, which makes me jealous. I want to go to Shenzhen for sure.
Yeah, you should come. I'd be happy to show you around.
On my list.
If I can make it happen, I will. And
flights are not that much. Like San Francisco to here round trip is like $550.
Oh wow, that's not bad.
So it's not crazy. Yeah.
No, that's decent. I do have my passport. Yeah, we run into this quite a bit, and it's unfortunate to see less competition because of issues like this. But that's a valid concern. If you buy something from an overseas company and you have problems with it,
it's you gotta be mindful of that. I mean, last year, or maybe not last year, maybe the year before, I bought a Sony XZ Premium, and within the first 3 weeks, the very first time it was waterproof. The very first time I put it in water, the headphone jack stopped working, and it was an international version, so I couldn't get any. There was no warranty support on it, so I was just stuck with a phone that the headphone jack didn't work, and so it was like pretty much useless for me. Other than, normal day-to-day stuff, but I couldn't listen to any audio via the headphone jack. Yeah,
that's unfortunate. And I'm good. I understand the convenience of having wireless. So when people use the argument that like, oh, what do you need a headphone jack for? Everything's wireless. I agree. But I want to say, being able to fall back on that when you want to. And I forgot to charge my Bluetooth. Oh, I left it in the other, whatever. Being able to swipe my credit card. I got an auxiliary jack in my stereo in my car that doesn't have Bluetooth right now. It would be nice to plug this in. We had another guest on here recently who does a lot of reviews of Chinese phones, and he did a poll on his channel. And the question was, would it make a difference to you if a phone has a 3.5 millimeter jack or not? And by far, the answers from the people that responded was yes. I want my 3.5 millimeter.
Yeah.
Even if I use Bluetooth, even if I do whatever you want to say, I like having that there. Like it's definitely something that was taken away from people, and at the same time, many were convinced to argue in favor of taking it away. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Consumerism has reached, I think, its epitome of influence. I can't see it. I mean, unless people start going out and killing each other in the name of a company, I can't see it getting any stronger than it is today. It's outrageous. Anyhow, I think that we are just about ready to wrap up here, gentlemen. If there's anything you want to add. Oh, and Johnny also stated Shenzhen is the new Silicon Valley of Asia. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I would caveat it with, like, it doesn't mean that Silicon Valley in San Francisco is no longer relevant. But the way I present it is that Silicon Valley is not Silicon Valley anymore. It's Software Valley. And Shenzhen really is the new Silicon Valley in terms of hardware, the silicon part of Silicon Valley. If you want to be designing and designing and manufacturing electronics, like, this is the place to be. Right. There's far more knowledge here. There's far more supply chain here. It's really kind of the place. And we're seeing a lot of startups coming here from the US and from Europe to prototype hardware, to build hardware, because it's much more friendly to that type of innovation. Right. And then innovation around those types of products. We're not seeing the level of software that's happening in Silicon Valley. There is some, don't get me wrong, right? Like Tencent, and there's a bunch of other companies here that have large software engineering offices here.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but two-part question here. If there isn't already one, do you think it's possible that in the future there will be a third operating system, specifically from somewhere in China? Because when we look at it right now, you got iOS. If you sign up for that team, you're there, you're good. You have Android, and we have this situation with ZTE where if they're going to continue to manufacture handsets, they're going to need an operating system. And once we get to the point where we really are streaming applications and everything runs through HTML5, and you don't necessarily have to have a marketplace to get your apps from, it seems like that would be the logical point for someone to say, hey, you know what, we're bringing back Windows, BlackBerry, whatever, or Symbian, or we're coming out with something new, and now we have our own operating system and we don't have to worry about losing it somehow.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. That would be a real, I haven't thought a lot about that. That would be a real uphill battle to fight. I think there are some big Chinese manufacturers that have a chance at that, right? And if they continue to get sort of locked out of the Android ecosystem, then, I mean, they're never going to be allowed to run iOS, I don't think. I don't think Apple would ever go for that. So if they continue that Android, then, and I don't fully understand what the legal requirements are here. Like, I mean, parts of Android are open source, so I don't know what options they have of sort of, forking Android, right? I guess would be kind of the most logical next step from my perspective. And it would, obviously you wouldn't be able to tie into like the Google Play Store and things like that. But, in China, you can't access Google Play, right? So when you buy an Android phone, you get some third-party app store, right? Some third-party Chinese app store that, looks very different to Google Play in terms of what apps are on it. So that's kind of what I would expect as a first-order approximation. I would see, like, if somebody was gonna make a new operating system that really had a chance, it would be somebody big, ZTE, Huawei, maybe Xiaomi. Xiaomi is a super interesting company and like very forward thinking and very sort of like they get kind of the product innovation and branding piece. So I could see them maybe doing something like that, but it'd be a major gamble.
Enan's over there laughing. Do you know something about Xiaomi? I know you guys are both
No. Scotty's saying, I think it's going to be an uphill battle, and it's going to take one of the bigger companies. But what I was thinking is just in terms of the consumers. I mean, we know that, like I said, people are brand loyal, and same thing happens when it comes down to the software that they use. I mean, for a long time, there was Windows, and then there's Mac OS. I mean, so it's going to be an uphill battle to get a consumer to switch over to something different.
Yeah, and we have a third option on desktops, Linux, and it really hasn't gotten the consumer adoption that I think people, at least Linux fans were thinking it would. And that's been it's found its foothold on sort of the server side and the embedded side, but do I ever see Linux being, a really viable, do I see my mom running a Linux laptop anytime soon? Nah, not really.
Yeah.
I don't. And I kind of feel that same way about a third cell phone operating system.
Yeah, and there are rumors of I want to say Palm and or HP going back into manufacturing handsets, but obviously on Android and not probably their own system. Tech for Your Needs asked, what do you think about Tizen? I don't know the first thing about it. Have either of you guys got any
I've only seen it on Samsung watches. I haven't seen it on, anywhere else beyond that. So I'm not, it's okay for what I've seen, but I mean, it's not Android. It's not. It doesn't have some of the functions and features that I would be looking for. I mean, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know anything about it. I've heard of it, but that's about it.
I couldn't address that question at all. I don't know the first thing. I want to try to get a couple of these questions real quick. We're going to sign off here shortly. We lost our chat moderator, so sorry everyone. If you have a question that wasn't answered here during the stream, please put it below in the comments. We'll try to come back and answer those as time permits. We're just about ready to roll. But someone, Giles Wells, said, anyone asked about the iMac Pro screen need for Linus Tech yet?
Yeah. So I did get a chance to hang out with Linus, and we did walk around the markets a bit, and he asked about that. He said, is there any place that sells iMac Pro parts? And it's something that has been a little bit hard for me to sort of communicate about the markets, which is that despite appearances and despite how big they are, you can't actually get anything in the world at the market. There is some stuff that is easy to find, some stuff that's quite hard to find. I don't actually know where to go in the market to get iMac or Mac parts in general. There is a little bit of refurb Macs for sale, but I don't see a lot of vendors selling parts in the way that you see vendors selling parts for iPhones.
Okay.
And I think the reason for that is purely volume, right? There are significantly more iPhones in the world than there are iMac Pros.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so it makes a lot of sense to have this really big, vibrant in-person ecosystem around iPhones. It makes a lot less sense for all of that to be happening in the markets where people are paying. I mean, the rent in the markets is well outside of the realm of what you would ever think of. People are paying thousands of dollars US a month for a very small booth, right? So they have to be doing the turnover, and they have to be getting that value of that foot traffic in the markets for it to make sense for them to be in the markets, right? Can I order those parts online? Probably, if I go and look on Taobao or something like that. So a lot of the more niche stuff is going to be happening sort of online and out of band, right, and not in person, right? So we did walk around a little bit, and I pointed out a few of the better Mac repair shops that are in the markets, and said, hey, we go to those guys and see if they can support. But it wasn't easy in the short amount of time we had to know that I was going to be able to find a booth that we could go talk to that would have those parts, which is why we didn't go do that. I have since had a lot of people asking me about it, so I have thought if I have a spare hour or two, I might go walk around and see if I can find some of those parts, but I don't immediately know where to go.
Yeah. Okay. So good luck.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, I want to sign off here to everyone. So if you two gentlemen would hang out with me for just a second, I'm going to stop the broadcast and we'll just wrap up. It'll just take a second. Thanks again to Enan and Scotty from Droid Mania and Strange Parts. If you haven't checked out their channels, you absolutely should. I will put a link in the video description if I haven't already. Honestly, can't remember. It's been a while. But I'm going to do that. And until then, I'm taking off. I'll be back Monday at 2 p.m. Again, next Thursday. Not sure who we're going to have on, so it could be anyone. We'll see. Again, thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate you joining us tonight.
It's been